if you don't have that aspiration to be a general manager
Mhm.
or climb the ranks in the club industry world, it's going to make you better at your job because now you're going to have a perspective that you can relate to that person and you can hear different conversations.
Welcome to Leadership on the Links, the podcast that showcases innovators in golf course management and the issues they face. I'm your host, Tyler Bloom. In Leadership on the Links, you hear the stories of people shaping the industry from their first swing to their dream match. You feel like you're on the course playing with your most inspiring colleagues, having great conversations, digging into insights and sharing a few laughs. Our industry is changing. As a leader, you need to keep up on everything from trends to technology to best practices. Together, we'll continue to build world-class clubs and teams. Let's get to it. Enjoy.
All right. So we are joining live today with Meredith and Mary from the team of Post Club Managers Association recap. First of its attendance for Bloom Golf Partners, myself or anybody, I think, on the teams. It was an interesting couple of days. And I just want to first and foremost say I appreciate the two of you coming. But secondly, I appreciate the welcomeness and sort of just graciousness from not just the Club Managers Association, but all peers, friends, colleagues that attended. It was pretty eye-opening experience, even though in a very short time frame. It was a little bit of a whirlwind, as oftentimes it is spoken on the podcast that I am the bottleneck, and Mary and Meredith picked up the slack the chaos that I dropped. So appreciate the two of you.
It's our pleasure. It was definitely a learning experience for everyone.
Yeah. What was if you had to kind of sit here and paint the picture of what your expectations were going in to that versus what you saw, what just kind of some comments and off the cuff comments too about that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I honestly think, we've had, like Tyler said, sort of not just a whirlwind, for this conference, but just conference season in general. I know those that are like us and kind of, go to all of these back to back. It's just kind of a crazy couple of weeks. But honestly, for me personally, I didn't go in with too many expectations because I think as a first timer attending this one, it's just sort of, let's just see how things go. I'm kind of the person that tries to just go in open-minded with new things, new experiences like this. We've done the setup, we've done things like that. Like we kind of know what to expect in that regard, but otherwise not too many expectations. All I sort of heard leading up to it was it's significantly smaller than some of the other ones that we've attended. So just kind of being aware of maybe that, but otherwise just keeping an open mind with what to expect.
Agree. I think as far as the actual trade show itself was typical in terms of, not at the magnitude of like PGA Show, but also very distinctly different than GCSAA. Like GCS was, I think, more like grand type of setups and booths, just obviously given like the big equipment companies and things like that. Whereas I feel those were translated like PGA, very retail, apparel centric. GCS, obviously the big wow ones are the equipment. And here I felt like it was a lot of like product and software centric, but generally speaking, typical to a trade show. I will say I was surprised, and maybe just because we were somewhat last minute, maybe more or less just uninformed, or we were just missing things because we were trying to get things, squared away to attend, that the events surrounding didn't understand or know the potential that we could have tapped into. And we absolutely will next year. But I think that would be probably my biggest takeaway are the outside connecting events. And they're wonderfully planned, and I think could be beneficial for sure.
Yeah, I think for me, what things stood out is just didn't know what I didn't know. And whether that's the events, whether that's the level of education that was provided, that I think was very transferable, whether you're a director of golf, whether you're a director of agronomy or general manager, a lot of it was overlapping themes on leadership, club trends of that nature that I would envision that more of those operator department head roles should be going to them for really anybody. And then secondly, for me, I would to give a shout out to so many of our clients who their GMs, and other co-team members came up and were intentional about coming up and saying hello. Like that was very rewarding for me as somebody who, for a better part of my career, looked up to general managers and reported general managers, and to sort of be in that sort of space was really rewarding for me. I, again, was probably pretty shocked at the trade show was, and again, not to knock on it, it was perfect setup. It wasn't overwhelming comparative to like the PGA show, the GCSAA show. This seemed like a lot more intimate and a little bit more, I don't know if I want to use the word personalized, but personalized to like this group. So you didn't really have just some random booths with things that you never heard of. Like you could see the connectivity, but it was really like to the point. So I just thought, for 2.5 days, was very well organized. And I know there were a lot of events like beyond when we were there that people could engage with. So if you're a listener and you've never been, whether it's a PGA show or the CMAA show, I would really consider trying to rotate one of these in every 2 or 3 years.
I would certainly agree. I mean, I also love the timeline of the trade show too.
Yeah.
I feel like, yes, I absolutely agree. Like, and echo your thoughts. Like, it was very intentional the way that it's set up for that side of, say the industry itself. But the timeline, like, it wasn't overkill. I felt like it was the appropriate amount of time and balance between education as part of certain day and, people could plan accordingly and not necessarily miss out. Like, it was very intense. Like, X is in the morning, X is in the afternoon. And like, you could technically do both to somewhat of a full capacity and not have to like cross over. So I really like that. And I feel like almost like take note to other, not even maybe industry ones, but just conference/trade show setups. I really think that makes a world of difference and justifies maybe a shorter trade show period too.
Mm-hmm. What did you feel like if you had to like capture like the tone of that? Because I went into it being totally frank, was expecting like a very stuffy environment. I did not get that one bit.
At all. Not at all.
No, I didn't feel that at all. I know, like you had said, Tyler, it was nice seeing maybe other departments, introducing, at our booth, seeing maybe that we don't work directly with. For me, Meredith, I'm sure feels the same way too, as do you. I was kind of relying on people's badges because, I don't know as many faces because we're usually on calls with, sort of agronomy teams and things like that. So I would rely on badges. And if I were to see, clubs we've worked with, I mean, they've probably never heard of me. I would just introduce myself because it's like, I know your superintendent or your director. So it's just, and everyone is just so nice and so welcoming. And, it's always great to hear people talk about their teams. And that's sort of naturally how the conversations end up going. And so it's just always nice to kind of put all of those connections together and everybody just, it's kind of how, we feel like we're just excited to meet people and meet the rest of, people behind the teams that we've been working with for so long. And it's just kind of like puts a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together, for these, operations. And everyone was just so, so great. And maybe they did hear of us or knew of us. And maybe I wouldn't have thought that. So it was really, nice to kind of, go through that throughout the week.
I will say, Mary, 9 times out of 10, I was by your side when you would. And they're like, oh, Mary! Like they knew exactly who you were. So that does say a lot.
Yeah.
And kudos to putting yourself out. Like that's what it's all about, is putting yourself out there and going out of your way to, put a face with, a name that, again, we're a remote virtual company. So it's even more important to do that. But they knew who you were.
It was kind of eye-opening to see as many superintendents that were there. Now, I think there needs to be more, but I thought that there was a consistent flow both days of people who were superintendents currently coming here for education purposes, just broaden their perspectives, as well as those that were superintendents that are now general managers. And want to give a quick shout out to Bobby Davis, who is now the general manager at Oakmont Country Club and formerly assistant superintendent, amongst many others. But I want to give a quick shout out to Bobby. Super, super happy for him. But I thought that was kind of fascinating.
You want to go ahead, Mary?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, seeing, and we've talked a lot about sort of this just conference season in general, sort of having more crossover with departments going to the variety of shows. I think a lot of times it's, person goes to this one, X person goes to that, but it's sort of, spending time at maybe both. Maybe it's not every year, but doing that crossover to see what is at each of these shows. I mean, specifically, GCSAA, CMAA, PGA too. I think it's, seeing that crossover and maybe seeing a little bit of that even more so, because I think you just tend to learn more and you make more connections and you get a better idea of sort of what goes into the clubhouse, what goes into the agronomy team. It's just, again, there's so much learning at all of these events that it doesn't need to just be department specific. Having that crossover just gives you that much more knowledge across your whole team and across the whole club.
I think it's also a positive perception as well. As an example, just from a visibility standpoint, for example, if a superintendent or even an assistant were to be at the PGA show and be seen there, you are then associated with, because the maintenance agronomy side, they're usually outside of the clubhouse. And we have this discussion of like the out of sight team, the out of sight department oftentimes, right? Making everyone included. We talked about this in our presentation at the CMAA conference, is making a diligent point to include. Well, you could take it upon yourself to do that as well. So when you're visible among head golf professionals, directors of golf at their event, you are now on their playing field from a visibility standpoint. And I think that's extremely important to do, and vice versa, crossing over to, but I think specifically for PGA and CMAA. Because I think we do see a handful of GMs and things like that, but at GCS, and again, like Tyler said, more superintendents than I ever anticipated at CMAA, but absolutely could be more. I just think that brings that visibility to an equal playing ground.
I think as well, usually my position on this has been as superintendent being more of like a strategic partner with their club than just like an operational type role, which we could spend time on that. But I think more importantly is, even if you don't have that aspiration to be a general manager or climb the ranks in the club industry world, it's going to make you better at your job, because now you're going to have a perspective that you can relate to that person and you can hear different conversations. And I was thinking about when we first started, how different the conversations were. I guess it was Wednesday night compared to, here than it would be at, a chapter meeting with a bunch of superintendents talking about weather, talking about, technology, automation, or what projects they're up to, right? This was way more of, me personally was like, hey, what do you got going on in life? And there were certainly some bickering about members and capital dues and all sorts of things like that I definitely caught, but it was just more of like, hey, these are just generally good people that I think you strip away pedigree or club logo or anything like that, people could kind of just let their hair down if they had hair. Some of us don't, but they could just be themselves, and it was a fun group to be around. So the other thing that I thought about as it relates to like almost like a takeaway is how engaged people were in that presentation about team culture. For those that weren't in attendance, we quickly had a standing room only room, basically door, like one end of the room to the next. Poor Meredith is up on stage. I did not do a good job of like prepping presentation, but her and Bill Langley ham and egged it with me. And I could almost see like little beads of sweat maybe coming up of like, oh my God, this room is getting filled. What are we going to talk about? Where's this going? Sort of like this podcast.
Cool as a cucumber. You guys did awesome. I was very glad to be cheering you on from the audience. I will say that, but you guys did such a good job. I wanted to ask, How did you feel up there? Yeah, like Tyler said, for those who know, it was kind of more of a stage situation. A lot of times, sometimes they're just, on the same level, but if there was a stage set up and a podium and everything, how did you feel up there? I know it's kind of first time at CMAA, first time doing a presentation. Let's hear your thoughts on it. Maybe tell us what the presentation was about and tell us your thoughts.
I mean, Tyler and I are going to be polar opposite, obviously, on this. A lot of firsts. We'll just put it that way. I mean, it was awesome. First and foremost, it was really, really cool. Just being in the room of people that shaped my career. These are individuals from a peer and mentorship standpoint, being able to stand in front of them and present on the other side, on the business side. It was really, honestly, very, very cool. And I thank Tyler for inviting me to accompany him and Bill on the stage. But our topic was building a championship culture. Every club is very unique, ways that they do that. And there's always room for improvement there. And I felt like because it can be such a personal topic, that really drove a lot of the engagement. And Bill was wonderful in presenting some of like his experiences, and he went out and looked at other clubs that, post stuff online and presented that information. We polled the audience on pain points that are just like non-negotiable, like things like that. It was really, really, really cool to see. And yeah, I was a little bug-eyed when I saw about 500 people and every seat filled.
For those that are listening, we were workshopping the presentation Thursday on the trade show floor, and I felt very guilty of maybe should have had a little bit more planning session around this. However, for me, to that question is like a total sense of pride, like just pride in various ways of thinking of like my career starting as an intern all the way up, and to have a room full of general managers and key decision makers. And we had them listening in at, like, you could hear up in that room at various times, and we kept it pretty fun. But I think the couple key things that, for team culture is everybody is dealing with similar challenges, no matter what level club, in terms of hiring, keeping people, letting things go too long, not addressing, toxic people, not following up on different things. And not going to lie, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome or sort of like, man, I'm standing on here preaching to the choir on something that, like, quite frankly, I need to look in the mirror and, I'm living it, of terms of like trying to address that. And culture, I think, is such a buzzword that has such an interest. And a lot of times I think it just comes down to the fundamentals. What I heard post that, I had a conversation this week with somebody that was in that room, and a lot of what they're saying is, I'm having a hard time communicating to an employee that has been here for 42 years, or an employee who is part of an old regime, and I'm trying to make improvements in terms of like the direction the club's going, but they're really resistant. And I think it just comes back to fundamentally just like listening, just sitting down with people and not having an agenda, and just trying to really listen, which, again, preaching to the choir here of areas that I need improvement. So to stand on stage and like try to like share those messages, but there was a commonality around that like specific thing of trying to be more intentional and setting up time to spend with people, to hear them out. And a lot of times it's not about a paycheck. It has more about like, I want to take ownership of something. I want to own something, and then I don't want it to be shitted on. So that's kind of what I heard a lot from like post feedback. I don't know if there was any other comments that you heard. I do have a funny question that got asked that I think our superintendent brethren will enjoy, but I want to save that for a minute.
Mary, I don't know if you have anything.
No, I mean, I was in the audience, and I had my turn at the GCSAA presenting with Tyler. I was it was just, it's just, being, in the audience as a team member, seeing you guys up there. I mean, it's definitely a sense of pride. I feel like you guys did great up there. As someone that has a fear of standing up in front of a crowd, you guys did awesome. So I was just, very proud. And like you guys said, I think it was, well received, engaging. Again, I think for, being the first time at this, not that it's the first time, obviously, for you presenting, Tyler's, and Meredith, you've done all sorts of things as well. But I think it's, an exciting first to another exciting first to add to the list of things we've done this year, but actually, even more so condensed in the last 3-4 months is more how it's kind of gone. So it's just exciting to see that and throw ourselves in different situations like this and be a small part of that, even if it's just in the audience.
I think is one of the other takeaways from that presentation was, if you're a superintendent, a golf professional, and you're trying to build a relationship with your GM, the same fears and like struggles that you may have, they're also dealing with it as well, and trying to develop that relationship with use. Put yourself out there as well. Like they're not perfect either. And I think that was a real, I don't know, vulnerability or like a moment that I kind of saw and heard in conversations is I think general managers have got that same pressure too. And they're looking for their team members to help them and not just like wear the weight of the world on their shoulders. So I think if you're in those kind of positions, like engaging with them and getting them into your environment and just letting them know that you're there to help support them and you're not a threat, you're just somebody that wants to help them, I think is, an observation and perspective that I probably wouldn't have had, having always looked up to a GM and not looking at a GM or in this instance, we were looking down at GMs, in that audience. So I just think for those that are listening, you're facing the same they're facing the same challenge as you are, just maybe have a different perspective. But the one question that stood out to me that I got asked is, what is the most difficult position to fill in the industry? And without, I think, much hesitation, I said the equipment manager and assistant equipment manager. I did not hear anybody refute that either.
No one's ever going to refute that.
Evident that everyone's feeling that. Everyone is feeling that same pain point. So that was a given. But I guess what other one? That's an obvious one to us. What else what would be a number 2, would you say?
Interns. I mean, I think just getting people into the industry was a theme that I saw, whether it was the career services booth that they had at the trade show floor, getting more universities engaged in the club careers. Saw one of our friends in the industry, they have a new service out to help support, those individuals like looking to make career changes or get into the industry because the talent pipeline is so depleted. And it's a real concern for clubs across the country of where the next generation of leadership is coming from. So, again, to be able to sit up on stage and like talk about things that we're observing, on the superintendent side, I thought that was probably another theme that I saw or heard or picked apart.
I agree. And I actually, to that point, I loved how they had it set up on the trade show floor. It was in the middle of everyone. When I say it, just to put contact, is the career services for, obviously anybody that looking to come in or is very new, that sort of thing. It was in the middle of the trade show floor. And I just think it brought a connectivity to anyone passing by, to inquire, just to like be aware, honestly, is probably the biggest thing, is awareness for it. And I thought that was great. Another thing too, I would certainly recommend to any other trade show, if you offer something like that. If you don't, consider it. If you do, consider the placement of it on your trade show floor.
I don't know if you saw, there was a section that had like the idea fair where clubs would put different things that they're doing, whether it's through member engagement, whether it's through recruiting, whether it's through programming, all sorts of different things. And I thought that was a really cool thing that I would love to see the GCSAA sort of support something like that, where people can kind of share best practices on the floor. And certainly they have, I think, some sort of a judging contest around those best ideas and practices. I thought that was, again, a very different approach to education that I've found. If I'm a club and I go through and see some of those things, you're at least going to pick 1 or 2 things up.
I agree. Even down to like a social event idea. It was really, really cool. Again, one of those things you pick up, that knowing how us, for example, that we're involved in different facets of the industry, bringing these ideas to other areas, I think is important. And I love that. Yeah, I thought it was really cool. It makes you think outside the box. Very easily consider yourself confined to a certain way of running your operation or communication, whatever that looks like. But you can quickly realize the potential when you start to, see the volume of ideas that can be done.
Is there any perspective or an idea or something you took away from that show that maybe changed your perspective, whether it's with the superintendent side, clubs in general, or anything in between?
I don't know about fully change perspective, but something that I thought was interesting with this show in particular was most of the people that we talked to, they're there all week. Like there are, like Meredith was saying, there's a lot of events going on. There are things going on like Monday through Saturday. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot of time for people to take away from, regular work, at home, family things. But I was so surprised to hear how many people were staying that full week. But I think it's because there's so much education. There's so much stuff in the evening. There's like so many things going on that everyone's attending. It's not necessarily I'm just coming in for a day, I'm leaving. So I think what I sort of took away from that portion of it is people are there and they want to spend that time. Of course, you're seeing your friends you probably don't see all the time because they live on a different coast. Maybe that helps. There's a social aspect as well. But I think there's that, there's something to that. A lot of times, I mean, even us, sometimes we can just be in and out or, we have 48 hours, let's cram it all in. Whereas intentionality with what's being put on and what's being put out that like even us, I think, again, had we not come off, wild, winter, we probably could have gone to some of these education sessions that everyone can benefit from that. And I think even just like looking at it, like us being more intentional at these events, we're going and spending our time there, making sure we're also getting the most out of it. Again, we're in a little bit of a different position, maybe not as GMs or, clubhouse managers attending things like that. I thought that there was something to that. I think spending that time and getting the most out of it really said something to me from a event perspective.
I would certainly agree. That's the direction I was going to go to, the variety. Not that where we go, the other shows don't offer variety. They certainly do. But I guess volume and variety for various department managerial positions to sign up for. Again, something to take a very big piece to take away and into next year, shaping what makes sense, and what can we continue to benefit from, because there is a lot that was offered from that respect.
I laughed when we got to our booth setup, just so everybody hears this one. There was a sign that said newbie. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to get like little broed here. But even for like a new exhibit or whatever, there's so many different angles that you could take in it with intentionality that week and the kind of people that came up. I mean, we had everything from like media type representatives to leadership coaching consultants to general managers, superintendents, assistant GMs. And I thought that just like the wide scope of people's backgrounds and how they engage on that, week was pretty impressive. And I think that sort of I don't know if it changed my perspective on it as well, but I guess so gosh, I hate to downplay ourselves a little bit, but I was surprised the conversation around our company in specializing in director of agronomy and how many people I think are in tune with that maybe I didn't have that perspective before and maybe had more of a broader perspective of what our company does and what we can do and what we offer. And, Mary and I had a great conversation yesterday about like, it's something to be proud of. And it is, it is something that I feel really good that like we've been a part of like shaping that narrative around the superintendent profession and making it a more credible position. And, that's not just pay, that's also the position of the role within a club's context. And I just think the respect factor people have, and to be a part of shaping that. And there's other people and other groups that are doing that as well. It's not just us, but I thought that was sort of changed my own personal perspective on our own company, which I did not go into there thinking of it that way at all. And sort of a really unique reflection point of where does our company go? What do we focus on? And it's, I didn't expect that. And I think the follow up to the show has been one of serious reflection in so many different angles, but just for me, an appreciation that people recognize that and recognize the superintendent role. So I think that's important for superintendents to hear that, assistants to hear that this role is really important to the success of a club, and that the role is going to continue to elevate, and the expectations are going to elevate, which is a good thing for everybody.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the agronomy role is what determines many times who's joining your club, how many are joining your club, which directly impacts your revenue. I mean, it starts with the golf course and who's taking care of the golf course and who's, presenting your most prized possession on your property is the agronomy team. And seeing the recognition of that more and more, it's like, thank goodness, but it truly is. I mean, it is your moneymaker, quite frankly. So valuing those individuals is very important.
I would also add to that around, again, follow-up has been, Tyler, you should do a presentation with a general manager or their superintendent here, because these people are hungry for how to engage and how to support that department. And again, so if you're a listener, it's wanted at your facility, want to support you. Like, they want to recognize the things that you're doing. They want to get a better understanding of how that role functions, what's important to their team. And that whole presentation around team culture, a lot of, at least my own personal experiences, has been coming from a department that's so siloed and is such an afterthought at times. And so when people think about building team culture, like, they totally forget the agronomy side, just from the physical asset of being separated.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that was it. It's unfortunate that it is a natural distance, just in a physical sense on the property, but that makes it all the more important to put intentionality behind including that department in your culture and making those changes quickly.
Yeah. Something else, and last kind of like comments from me, and then we can come to a close here, but also, from like an internal team standpoint, I think about this, and like, you go to these trade shows with this intention of you're trying to build relationships with all of the people that are there, from, potential prospects, current clients, industry people. And I find that sometimes the best like takeaway is just spending time with our own team. And I think like that's like in of itself the value of going to these trade shows. And I think that many of my peers maybe underscore how valuable that is, to bring an assistant manager with them, an equipment manager, their GM, bringing their superintendent, their pro. And I find like that in of itself is like the value of going to these things, as well as just getting to spend time and build those relationships, even if they at times can be a little bit, there's disagreements or whatever. You just learn how to relate to the people within your team. Like, so that to me was self-reflecting of like the also key value of going to these events this past few weeks.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I feel like you peel away the layers of personality, which only positively impacts your conversations when you're back in the workspace, because you understand the individual, their personality more, what they respond to when you get them in situations or atmospheres outside of, their workspace. So the more you can, learn about them from a separate standpoint, the better leader you can be in conversation and, when it comes time to work. I think it's definitely very necessary.
You strip away the bullshit. Let's just put it that way. You strip away a lot of bullshit that, people put layers on, including myself, and you come to realize who this person is and that they're a human being as well. And I think like that's the value that you sometimes just can't get at your own work site, in the day-to-day of what's going on. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just the reality of it. So I think you get to see people who they are, and what kind of like they're going through as well. So good, better, and different. But we had a blast. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. It was fun in various ways. And we certainly appreciate all the support, all the connections. And yeah, I mean, that presentation was probably one of my favorite presentations I've been a part of.
It was fun. And I just want to make a note, because I know he'll be listening. Thank you, Carlo.
Yes.
Gessner, for coming with us and being, along for the ride. It was a pleasure having you with our team at the booth, and
you were a huge help, and we appreciate it so much.
Yes. And just a shout out to what Carlo offers visual, photo, video for golf courses. And above and beyond, other things, he can actually capture your entire property. So product photography, anything you could think of. So it was a pleasure having him at the booth, and we'll include his information here as well. So yeah, he was a help. Yeah. He helped us with our banner and our setup. So
some of our latest photos and various more professional looking items, those are courtesy of Carlo.
Okay, so now we opened up another discussion on visuals. So this might be a separate outtake that we have to. So I just came to me is the idea of that identity, right? Your professional identity, and having those photos. And for those that are listening, you may have seen some new upgraded team photos on our website. You may have seen some things floating around on social media. I can't speak higher about the value of having high quality photos for your facility, for your own professional pursuits, and how much that can make a difference and how it can make you feel too, versus just a generic pulling out an iPhone and having your best friend take that photo. So, kudos to Carlo for flying a couple thousand miles for his own business interest, but also to help support our team as well. But I think that's such a low hanging fruit thing that can really make the difference as you think about your own professional career, personal career, and as well for the organization.
And it doesn't have to be a huge time commitment. I mean, for example, when we were able to get outside, Tyler, you were literally working. You were on the phone working, and we were able to get imagery that works, simultaneously for the business, but also it can be done. It doesn't have to be, a massive day away from your it can be done, and it is very, very much worth it for not only your people, but your property. Superintendents, push for it, because that is a beautiful way to showcase your work. So I'd say throw it in as a line item in your budget. Very, very worth it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate, Mary. Any last thoughts, comments for the both of you?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. We're just already ready to start planning for next conference season. I can tell you that right now.
That was a big at me for those that are listening, that I need to be better prepared to not spring on last minute things for.
Well, not just that, but truly, it's you're done and things are already being submitted. We're submitting presentations. We're submitting. So it's it's a little bit of A, a little bit of B, certainly, but it never fully stops. Maybe we don't have to hop on a plane, but just got to keep doing it.
To that point, though, if I just want to add, what Mary's referring to is, topic discussions, education topics to cover in upcoming conferences, regional events, chapter, anything. So I would encourage our listeners, if there is something that you, from a business, operational, talent, perspective, that you would love us to cover at your facility, or just drop it in as a suggestion, for us to propose, please reach out to us. Whether it's when this post, just comment, whatever it is, but reach out to us. We want to hear that. We want to speak on and things that you want to hear, even if it's a podcast topic.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Leadership on the Links. For more leadership insights and industry expertise, connect with us at bloomgolfpartners.com or follow us on social media sites LinkedIn and Instagram. If you enjoyed this episode of Leadership on the Links, we'd be thrilled if you'd leave a review or share it with someone who you know would get some value. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to stay updated. Thanks for joining us today.